Good morning, you two. How are you doing?
We're great.
We are great. No complaints.
Well, good. There's too much complaining as it is, and I'll tell you what, your podcast is going to give us every reason in the world to break away from those complaints because you are teaching, and I love you for doing this.
Aw, you're so nice. I mean, what we're doing is hopefully encouraging other people to start realizing that, you know what, be positive, have a good attitude, and just look around at what really matters, like what the important things are, and strive to be better at anything you do. And sometimes just listening to some conversation, one little thing is triggered to make a difference in your life. And that's what we hope what happens with this podcast.
You know, one of the strangest things, the positive thing, because I do live a life of being positive, but I actually had an operations manager tell me one time, he says, I don't need your uppity today. I need you to be a jerk. And I thought, I think our day today is going to be over with. And because it's like, but I mean, that's one thing about being positive is sometimes people don't want to deal with that. How do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I crave it, honestly. Sorry, I crave it, and I kind of, got rid of a lot of negativity in my life, blocked people, and, I'm a much happier person for it.
Yeah, the mute function is very effective, both in life and on social media.
And don't you think that being positive starts with being present in the now, being mindful?
100%. I think you are exactly right. I think if you're not fully focused on what's happening in front of you, and looking to the future, certainly, and considering the past, but it's really hard to stay positive because there's just too much happening around the world that we need to be aware of and that we need to take in. But it can get really overwhelming at times if we don't also focus on what's happening.
And I think a lot of people don't realize the importance of health and how they feel, because it's really hard to be positive when you don't feel good. And I see a lot of people that, live with not as much, vibrancy as they should, because I do honestly believe, and this is just a personal opinion, that if you're always putting not good things in your body, you're just not going to always feel great. So I always encourage people to clean up your diet, and often that cleans up your attitude and your mood.
The podcast we're talking about is the important things. One of the things that I do, and I like to find out what you guys feel about it, is that I keep a defrag journal. Every afternoon, I defrag my day. In other words, it's like if it was a bad day, if it was whatever's happening, I clean it out of my mind, body, and soul.
Ooh, wait, can you tell us more about that practice? What does that involve?
I had a breakdown in 2017, and I thought, well, why is it I'm starting my day off positive, but I'm ending my night in a negative way? And I thought, you need to figure this out. And so I sit down with a writing instrument and a tablet, and what I do is I interview myself. I go, so this is what happened today. Explain to me why you took this direction and didn't take this direction. So it's a one-on-one interview with the inner core.
Wow, that's a nice thing to leave to someone someday, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be great for TMZ probably. So when putting the podcast together, you know how it is, people tune in, they listen, and they're driving in the car or they're sitting in their office. What are you doing to keep us all engaged? Because you guys really do have that strength.
Oh, well, that's
I hope we do. Like anything, you just try to have, interesting conversation. You try to have people that are great conversationalists. We've interviewed people that are, I didn't want to get off with, and we've interviewed people that, I'm like, okay, how are we going to edit this down to make it, a little bit more exciting? But that's part of our job. But, there's so many podcasts out there. Everyone has so many choices. Hopefully that the interesting people that we find interesting, people listening will also find these people interesting.
Do you find that the biggest challenge is this thing called the new normal, where it seems like everybody is just kind of scrambled inside their mind and they just need direction? Because first of all, that's the reason why I love your podcast, is that you are standing up saying, hey, look, this is the way we need to go.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that we were really focused on with the show is making sure that there's actually takeaways, that it's just not another conversation of people that you can hear, anywhere else. Because a lot of folks that we're interviewing are interviewed all the time. They're doing this all the time. They've given tons of media interviews, and it's getting them out of that kind of rote answer to talk about things that we can all act on, but what we can actually have as a takeaway, right? So it's not just talking about somebody like Gloria Steinem's incredible career, which is obviously incredible and well documented, and you can listen to and read a lot about her, or hear lots of other podcasts that would probably go into a deep dive of her career. But what does she do in the morning? How does she keep her vibrancy?
Yep.
She just turned 88 last week, so how does that happen? How does that work? How does she still motivate herself to keep fighting for our rights on a daily basis, and how does she inspire that next generation? Those are the things that are interesting to me and Bobbi at this point. And also knowing that she doesn't exercise. Well, what? Like, how does that work? You're 88, so there's a really fun moment in that conversation where Bobbi offers to go over and help her stretch, and teach her stretching. And that was just like a fun, light moment that I think you won't hear on another show.
Well, you talked with Gloria Steinem, and what I loved about what you guys did was that you proved to the world that Gloria was just not a 1970s person, that she still is very much actively involved with the community and continues to grow and inspire generations.
And, that is correct. And also one thing that people don't realize, this is the way I've always dealt with the people in my life. And, being a makeup artist, I work with a lot of celebrities. And you know what? Like, we are all the same. We are all the same. We are all people. We all deal with the similar things, about how we look, how we feel, what we're doing. And you always think of someone that's famous as having all their, stuff together. And it's not true. So I want people to not just, feel bad when they listen to these fabulous people with these great lives, but realize whatever you are going through right now, it's okay, wherever you are. And maybe one little thing will change in you by listening to something someone else does.
Yeah, because it's such a relationship. Because when you're listening in the car or even at home, I mean, to me, this is the power of one-on-one, which radio has lived off from for since the beginning of time back in the 1920s. But I mean, you guys really have mastered that art of just, we're having a conversation, and you know what? You're involved, and you do get involved.
That's very kind of you. We hope so, because it's a delicate balance, and it's hard to do, and Bobbi's obviously been doing this for a couple of years as a podcaster, as a seasoned podcaster. I am newer to the format, but I really do love the intimacy of radio. It's something I grew up listening to all the time. I contemplated a career in radio. I never pursued it. So this is a really fun full circle moment to have this medium kind of present itself and to be able to have these conversations in this format.
This is going to sound too inside, I'm sure.
I never,
I was just, please continue, Bobbi.
Oh, I was just going to say that the truth be told is I've never listened to myself on radio or a podcast, because I just don't, I just don't. So hopefully it's good. Someone will have to tell me.
Well, you know what that tells me? That tells me that you trust the universe to move through you, and that you know that you are the vessel, and that you know that somehow, some way, you're going to affect somebody. It's almost like you're adding makeup to our personal lives.
That's very interesting and sweet comment. And I do, honestly, I am one of those people. I guess I trust the universe, or I throw things up in the air, or I throw them on the wall and see what sticks. I mean, I've done that my whole life.
I'm going to go really kind of inside on radio and stuff like that, what they've trained us in all these years of radio and stuff. I want to compliment you guys on the way that you're doing the Cheers bar approach. And what I mean by that is that your body language is leaning into the conversation. And a lot of times people won't do that. They're just, they're just strict against their body. But you guys definitely put yourself into what you're doing.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah, and it's not very easy. But I'm sitting in my husband's closet half of the time trying to, have good sound. And I mean, for me personally, when I stand up afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, that was a long conversation. Anjali, you sit at a desk, I think.
Yeah, I usually sit in my daughter's bedroom, actually. She's not happy about it, but I do sit in my daughter's bedroom at her little teeny desk there. But yeah, I think leaning into the conversation, it's figurative, it's literal, and it is important. So, it's kind of you to notice that we are physically leaning into this conversation, but I do think it's important to keep the conversation intimate, and especially since we're not in a studio where everyone's doing this stuff on Zoom now. So we don't have that physical kind of energetic space to share with each other, but this is a way of doing that, I think.
So then when you're putting the podcast together, the important things, one of the things that we were always was save it for the air. How do you guys build your podcast as a team and save it for the air? Because, when you're planning, you can waste all of that energy and it's like, oh, we didn't even get there. We were there in the conversation, but we didn't get on the podcast.
It's a really great
question.
Funny
you ask that question. Because we are so different. I do nothing. I look at the paper right before. I might do a quick search or Google, to see what I could find out. And I just dive in and just ask random questions or see where the conversation goes. My co-host, and one of the reasons I said, let me do this with her, is the opposite.
Yes, I like to research. I am a lawyer by training. I like to know information. I have my prep sheets. I've listened to other podcasts the guest has done recently, kind of trying to figure out what is top of mind for them, just so I have an awareness. I like to have a bit of context before going in, especially when I don't know the guest as well. And it helps me just have a bit of framing for going in. But then I think what Bobbi and I have learned to do, because our producer has helped us do this, is we'll get on the Zoom or on the call before we start recording, and we'll just start chatting. And he's like, no, hold it, wait until we start recording, because there's always fun stuff and fun moments that naturally come out of even those little bits of conversation. And so I think he's learned to hit record early when we first get on, because there's always something fun and memorable that comes out of those early moments in the conversation too.
Are you up close and personal with the analytics in the way that it's fascinating? Sure, we have American listeners and stuff like that, but what I love is that when I have listeners in India, when I have listeners in Ukraine and things like that, that what that does as a broadcaster and as a podcaster is the fact that you can train your conversations into affecting all people rather than one people.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The analytics I know exist. I don't know where they are. So I will have my co-host look at them and give me the cheat sheet.
Okay. So I actually looked at them for the first time this weekend because I didn't know that they existed. I mean, I knew they existed in theory, but I didn't know where to find them. And I love data. I worked at Google for many years, so I do love data. And it was truly fascinating to see where the listenership was coming from, because it was all over the place. It was mostly US based for sure, which is not surprising given that both of us are here, and our first two guests were definitely more US centric in a way. But we had a smattering of folks truly globally. It was really pretty interesting. So I don't know that we'll double down on guests for every single country in a 26 episode run, but we'll see. Hopefully we keep doing this for a while and we can get there.
Building the show. I know that you guys get together and you talk it, but the thing is, though, you still have to share a story. When it comes to the editing process, are you part of it? Because I mean, the important things on this podcast is the fact that you guys really have a true connection with each other as well as those that are listening. You make us feel like we're part of it. How is that in the building process?
I do not listen to any of them, and I see on Anjali's notes that says, there was a weird laugh at 4 point something minutes. So I again trust the universe and trust my co-host that if I sound dumb, she'll fix it.
Yeah, look, we have a really skilled editor. We have a lot of folks on each of our teams who are thoughtful listeners of early edits of the podcast. So we're able to get to a place that we think is a tight conversation, but leaves enough room for some of the magic that unfolds naturally, but without us just kind of droning on and on to get there, which sometimes happens because Bobbi and I are both very chatty, and sometimes we take our guests down a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with what we're trying to get to, and we have to kind of bring ourselves back. So there are points that need to be edited out. And, the beauty of the technology that exists now, certainly is that if there is that awkward laugh that interrupts the flow of a conversation, you can lift that out, which is nice. So That's where some of my
I sit here and break it all down to different tracks. I'm on one track. You guys are each on separate tracks and stuff like that. And so because I'm such a perfectionist, how do you live with your perfection self?
I'm really not a perfectionist. I'm a nutcase. I strive, but I am not a perfectionist.
Yeah, I would echo that for Bobbi. For myself, I am not a perfectionist. I jokingly refer to myself as type A minus. I'm not type A. I'm more type A minus.
One of the things that you guys cover in the early episodes of the podcast, The Important Things, is, authentic, gratifying life. Define that for me so that listeners can say, oh, I can work on that. It's not as hard as the title says.
I'm going to defer to Bobbi on that one.
Well, you know what? It's just honestly what I've learned and how I've lived my life, because I certainly didn't wake up like this. I wasn't born like this. I'm someone who has a positive attitude. Mm-hmm. And I also realize the only change that matters are the ones that happen like organically and simply and comfortably. Maybe it's stopping smoking. That's not an easy one. Maybe it's, having 1 cup of coffee and not 6. Maybe it's, making sure you exercise or you meditate, all those things. So you can't do it overnight.
Right.
So hopefully someone will listen to the podcast and will have a takeaway and say, oh, you know what? I never thought of doing my business calls while I was walking in the park. Let me try that. It could be those simple things that makes the biggest difference in someone's life.
Do you get the opportunity to talk to those that are tapping in to listen? And the reason why is because when you talk about meditation and you talk about how it really does empower, the mind, body, and soul, but people they'll take it, they'll try to activate it. When it doesn't work, they quit. And it's like, how can I get back into that person's head that you've got to keep growing no matter what?
Well, it's okay to quit, right? It's okay to quit. It's okay to have a couple days where you kind of fall back to your old habits. But I guess teaching people just to be aware, like, okay, every time I eat that bagel, I fall asleep in a coma. Wow. It's like Pavlov's dog. Maybe I shouldn't eat that. I don't like feeling like that. Like, I learned not to have dessert when I have an alcoholic beverage when I'm eating out, because you know what happens? I wake up terrible the next day. So now guess what? I don't have a dessert, and I'll have blueberries when I go home. That works for me. You have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, and I think it's just giving people permission, if they need it, to start again, right? And that your best is different every day, but it's okay to not be quote unquote perfect every day. I'm certainly not. I'm sure Bobbi would never claim to be either. And we're just doing the best we can, and we're all kind of fumbling along. And I think you'll hear that from both of us in these conversations. And I think you'll definitely hear that from our guests. And I think that's the part that we hope resonates with people. It sort of normalizes all these things that we're all dealing with anyway. And hopefully you can take something away and apply it to your life that really makes a big difference.
Will you guys deal in the future episodes with a thing that I call post-production blues? And that is that, and every person has it. We all have this energy burst to be on the things that we love. And then we have the valley because after something's done, we go into post-production blues. I think that is a very dangerous place. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I created shows on iHeart, because of Chris Cornell, because what happened from that rock show to what happened. And I think that every person goes through that. They just don't want to talk about it.
Oh, I'm so glad you put that up. I didn't know that was a thing. And I feel that after every episode, because I get like this big adrenaline rush while we're doing the interview, which I don't even realize is happening. And then after, it's like, whew, I'm wiped. So that's good to know that that's actually a real thing.
Yeah,
but realizing that that's a normal thing. So I do think that, look, I've done big production things or planning a wedding, like any of those things, you have that afterwards. But really what it is your body and your mind telling you to take a break and just kind of resettle, because you end up using so much more, brain power and energy doing these things. And then, yes, you do crash because, it takes a while it's like gas in the car. You just like your tank is empty. You need to kind of at least fill it up halfway.
Yeah. So, I like that, filling up halfway. That's your positive attitude right there. You didn't say half empty.
Yeah. No, halfway, exactly.
Well, listeners need to understand that when they listen to your podcast, the important things is that it's like you're listening to a friend have a conversation. And during these days of challenge and uncertainty, you guys really are a true connection to our souls.
We appreciate it. That's what we hope to be.
Oh, so
That's great.
nice.
Well, please come back to this show anytime because the door is always going to be open for you too.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, and we really appreciate you having us on.
You bet. Be brilliant today, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, you too. Thanks.